Before Star Wars reshaped cinema, a secret lineage of films dared to fuse the grit of the Wild West with the infinite void of outer space. Some dazzled, others flopped, many vanished into obscurity. Yet each whispered of smugglers, laser duels, and rebellion long before George Lucas's saga. Were these forgotten works, stepping stones, or warnings from the galaxy of cinema's past? Rocketship X-M, 1950. Released at the dawn of the atomic age, Rocketship X-M promised thrilling adventure, but delivered something darker. Marketed as a daring space odyssey, it shocked audiences with its apocalyptic themes. Instead of celebrating space conquest, it revealed the ruined civilization of Mars, destroyed by its own nuclear hubris. A grim moral wrapped inside a rocket launch spectacle. Critics were stunned. Advertised as competition to Destination Moon, the film ditched Technicolor optimism for monochrome fatalism. Religious groups accused it of fueling anti-nuclear paranoia. Some theaters reportedly pulled it, citing the bleak ending as inappropriate for youth audiences. What should have been a simple sci-fi adventure was treated almost like propaganda. Behind the scenes, chaos brewed. Production raced to beat George Pal's more optimistic Destination Moon. Sets were cheap, effects rushed, yet that very roughness gave the movie a documentary-style grit. Viewers felt like they were watching future history unfold. The aftermath? Rocketship X-M disappeared from circulation for decades, eclipsed by cheerier space fantasies. But later generations recognized it as one of the first space westerns, a grim journey into an alien frontier, where explorers met the same fate as reckless pioneers. Its legacy lies in its fatalism, a warning that conquest, whether of the West or the stars, carries a cost. In its shadows, Star Wars found light. The Phantom Planet, 1961. At first glance, The Phantom Planet was dismissed as drive-in filler. A low-budget curiosity, it seemed destined to be forgotten, but hidden beneath its plywood sets was an idea that echoed into Star Wars. The lone wanderer trapped among strange cultures, forced to choose sides. The story follows an American astronaut stranded on a tiny asteroid inhabited by miniature people. Shrunk to their size, he's forced into gladiatorial combat, caught in political intrigue, and ultimately must defend the colony from alien raiders. The premise, though pulp, resonated with themes of exile, honor, and reluctant heroism. Controversy surfaced immediately. Some critics accused it of exploiting Cold War fears with thinly veiled metaphors. The asteroid's fragile community, threatened by foreign invaders, smacked of anti-communist paranoia. Others saw something more subversive, an allegory about the futility of isolationism. Small Wonder TV censors later trimmed it for daytime broadcasts, calling certain sequences too violent for youth. Production itself was a struggle. Special effects were so rudimentary that audiences laughed during screenings. The lead actor, Dean Fredericks, later admitted the cast often improvised lines because the script kept changing. Yet for all its cheapness, the film carried a haunting sense of destiny, the lone hero choosing between escape and belonging. For years, The Phantom Planet languished in obscurity, mocked by late-night TV. But reappraisals uncovered its DNA in later epics. Reluctant heroes, alien gladiators, and cosmic battles. Like a dusty western found in an attic, it hinted at stories still waiting to be told. The lesson? Even the smallest planets cast long shadows. Robinson Crusoe on Mars, 1964. When Byron Haskins' Robinson Crusoe on Mars premiered, audiences expected pulp adventure. What they got was a meditative, lonely survival tale, a Western drifter marooned on a cosmic frontier. Critics didn't know whether to laugh or applaud. The film reimagines Defoe's castaway tale. On Mars, astronaut Christopher Draper is stranded after a crash, forced to survive with dwindling oxygen, strange alien foods, and a hostile environment. Later, he rescues an alien slave, forging an uneasy bond as they evade their pursuers. It was half sci-fi spectacle, half frontier survival tale. Censors frowned. The film's bleakness, its themes of slavery and persecution, unnerved distributors. Some school screenings refused to show it, citing disturbing imagery. NASA advisors were also unhappy, arguing it presented space travel as grim and hopeless, a dangerous message at the height of the space race. Behind the scenes, budget woes plagued production. Elaborate sets drained funds, forcing last-minute script cuts. Star Paul Manti struggled with long, silent sequences, worried audiences would be bored. Instead, critics later praised those very silences, calling them eerie, poetic, and ahead of their time. Initially, the movie flopped. Audiences expecting space battles instead got survival drama. Yet in later decades, cinephiles rediscovered it, noting how its lonely hero prefigured Luke Skywalker staring into twin suns, a dreamer, longing for escape, yet trapped by fate. The film vanished, then resurfaced on Criterion decades later, celebrated as a proto-Star Wars odyssey. Its enduring message? Even in the vast emptiness of space, the struggle for freedom and survival feels timeless, an echo of frontier myths retold among the stars. Planet of the Vampires, 1965. Mario Bava's Planet of the Vampires was marketed as a lurid Italian B-movie. But what unfolded was a haunting nightmare that many now see as a direct ancestor to both Alien and Star Wars. Beneath the pulpy title hid a chilling meditation on possession, betrayal, and cosmic dread. The premise is deceptively simple. Two starships land on a mysterious planet, but the crew soon fall under the control of disembodied alien forces, turning against each other in violent fits. With gothic visuals, swirling fog, and sleek leather costumes, Bava fused horror atmosphere with frontier exploration. The result? A cosmic ghost town where lawmen and outlaws alike become pawns of an unseen master. Controversy came quickly. Italian censors demanded cuts to violent sequences, while American distributors retitled it and heavily edited its runtime. Religious groups criticized its satanic overtones, interpreting the possession theme as an allegory for demonic influence. Audiences were unsettled, unsure whether they'd witnessed science fiction or a horror western in space. Behind the camera, chaos reigned. The budget was so small that Bava used mirrors and painted backdrops to create endless alien vistas. Crew members recalled long hours and shoestring solutions, yet those very limitations produced visuals that influenced a generation of filmmakers, including a young Ridley Scott and George Lucas. At first, critics dismissed it as Eurotrash, but over time, its reputation grew. The image of hulking skeletons and derelict spacecraft eerily foreshadowed the space jockey in Alien. For Lucas, the sense of an ancient, haunted galaxy echoed in his own vision of Jedi Knights and fallen empires. Planet of the Vampires reminds us, sometimes forgotten B-movies ignite the spark of galaxies yet to be born. Queen of Blood, 1966. At the height of the space race, Curtis Harrington's Queen of Blood promised sleek adventure but delivered gothic terror. What looked like a standard space rescue soon veered into nightmare, blending Buck Rogers' optimism with vampire myth. The story follows astronauts sent to recover an alien distress signal. They discover a green-skinned alien queen, beautiful, silent, and deadly. Taken aboard, she preys on the crew, draining them one by one. It was Dracula reimagined for rocket ships, a frontier wagon train besieged by a predator. Censorship loomed. Some theaters trimmed scenes of drained corpses, declaring them too gruesome for teen audiences. TV syndication cut entire sequences, softening its menace. Yet those who saw the uncut version whispered about its eerie, dreamlike power. Was it pulp trash or a prophetic nightmare of deep space vulnerability? Behind the curtain, chaos ruled. Much of the film's footage was lifted from a shelved Soviet space epic, repurposed on a shoestring budget. Actors John Saxon and Basil Rathbone found themselves delivering serious lines amid mismatched stock footage. Rathbone, frustrated, reportedly called the project beneath him. Yet, somehow, the patchwork worked, creating an uncanny atmosphere critics later described as accidentally brilliant. The aftermath was mixed. The film quickly vanished from mainstream circulation, mocked for its cheapness, but decades later, historians re-evaluated it, noting its influence on later space horror hybrids. Lucas himself acknowledged that Harrington's films, with their pulp mystique, lingered in his subconscious. Queen of Blood endures as a strange artifact, part horror, part Western siege tale, a reminder that fear follows wherever humans stake new frontiers. Battle. Beyond the Sun, 1962, U.S. Version Roger Corman's Battle Beyond the Sun is a legend of reinvention. Originally a sober Soviet space drama, Corman bought the rights, hired a young Francis Ford Coppola, and transformed it into a surreal, space western fable dripping with Cold War paranoia. The original story chronicled rival American and Soviet crews racing to Mars, filled with patriotic fervor. But in Corman's U.S. edit, nationalities were erased, names were changed, and cheap monster footage was spliced in. Suddenly, it wasn't about political pride, it was about survival on a hostile frontier, complete with dueling alien creatures. A Soviet parable was recast as a pulp western in the stars. Controversy erupted. Film purists accused Corman of cultural vandalism, while Cold War audiences ate it up. American critics dismissed it as incoherent, but drive-in crowds loved its monster battles. Rumors spread that censors worried the original Soviet message might have slipped through, so dialogue was redubbed to stress universal brotherhood. Behind the scenes, Coppola cut his teeth on this chaos. He later admitted he learned to improvise under pressure, skills that shaped his career. Actors in the American reshoots complained of absurd costumes and rushed filming, but the movie soldiered on, a stitched-together hybrid of East and West. In the end, Battle Beyond the Sun became less about artistry than audacity. It foreshadowed Star Wars in its fusion of pulp monsters, rival factions, and space travel as frontier myth. What began as propaganda ended as cult oddity, a forgotten star chart leading toward the galaxy far, far away. Fantastic Voyage, 1966. When Fantastic Voyage premiered, it was heralded as groundbreaking, a dazzling visual spectacle that shrank its heroes into the microscopic world inside the human body. Yet beneath the dazzling effects was something older, something Lucas would later channel: the Western posse, venturing into hostile, uncharted territory. The premise was audacious. A team of scientists is miniaturized and injected into a man's bloodstream to save his life. Their submarine becomes a wagon train crossing treacherous deserts of blood cells, ambushed by the natives of the immune system. Danger lurked at every turn, from brain barriers to voracious antibodies. It was a survival journey, not unlike pioneers besieged on the frontier. Controversy followed. Critics were divided. Was this science fiction genius or medical horror? Religious commentators attacked it for playing God, while educators worried that its science blurred fact and fantasy. Some schools outright banned it from classroom screenings, fearing students would confuse its spectacle with real biology. Behind the scenes, the production nearly collapsed. Director Richard Fleischer fought studio interference as budgets spiraled. Elaborate sets required inventive tricks, giant fiberglass arteries, ballooning membranes, massive red cell replicas. Raquel Welch, the film's breakout star, nearly quit after a grueling scene where antibodies attacked her costume. The chaos was hidden from audiences, but insiders knew it was a war of attrition. The legacy was immense. It won Oscars, inspired a generation of special effects artists, and embedded the notion of the quest inside the unknown frontier. Lucas would later admit he adored its sense of immersion, the idea that scale itself could become myth. Fantastic Voyage proved the frontier isn't only among the stars, it can exist in every uncharted realm. The lesson? Exploration always comes at the edge of imagination, whether in galaxies or bloodstreams. Barbarella, 1968. When Roger Vadim's Barbarella hit theaters, it wasn't just camp, it was chaos. Marketed as psychedelic pop art fantasy, it was dismissed as frivolous, even scandalous. Yet behind the glitter and surreal imagery lay something striking. The Western drifter reimagined as a cosmic adventurer, wandering from one outlaw town to the next. Jane Fonda's Barbarella drifts through bizarre planets, encountering tyrants, rebels, and rogues. Each world is a saloon, each villain a frontier desperado dressed in cosmic excess. Instead of horses, she rides spacecraft. Instead of six-shooters, she wields ray guns. It was Buck Rogers, with a surrealist's brushstroke. Controversy was instant. European critics praised its daring visuals, but American audiences and censors balked. Some theaters refused to screen it, branding it immoral. Reviews skewered it as nonsense. Rumors circulated that studio executives panicked at its reception, cutting down entire sequences to avoid outright bans in conservative markets. Behind the curtain, production was chaos. Vadim clashed, with producers over tone: was it satire, pulp, or something in between? Jane Fonda, in her memoirs, recalled exhaustion from endless reshoots and costumes that barely functioned. Yet the film, in its excess, captured something no other had: the feel of a lawless, cosmic Wild West, where anything could happen. Initially a flop, Barbarella later resurfaced as a cult phenomenon. Midnight screenings celebrated its camp brilliance. George Lucas, while distancing himself from its bawdier elements, admired its world-building strange planets as eccentric towns, villains larger than life. That DNA seeped into his galaxy far, far away. Barbarella reminds us, even the most ridiculed visions can plant seeds of legend. Out of ridicule often comes reinvention. 2001, A Space Odyssey, 1968. Stanley Kubrick's 2001 was hailed as a masterpiece, but at its heart, it also carried the echoes of the space western. Not in campy ray guns or saloons, but in the myth of the lone wanderer, crossing into a new frontier that reshapes him forever. The film charts humanity's odyssey from apes to astronauts, culminating in a voyage beyond Jupiter. Its protagonist, Dave Bowman, faces betrayal by Hal, the ship's outlaw computer. Alone, he must push through desolation, survive the cosmic wilderness, and encounter something beyond human comprehension. Like a Western gunslinger, he emerges transformed by a duel on the frontier's edge. Censorship hovered. Religious groups condemned it as heretical, calling its cosmic monoliths blasphemous. Some audiences walked out in frustration, branding it incomprehensible. Studio executives panicked during early screenings, fearing it would flop disastrously. Even critics were split. Was it genius or indulgence? Behind the scenes, Kubrick's perfectionism nearly destroyed cast and crew. Actors repeated takes endlessly. The effects team invented technology from scratch, pioneering rotating sets and photographic tricks. Rumors spread that Kubrick deliberately locked out NASA advisors, fearing they'd stifle his vision. The pressure was so immense, some technicians quit mid-shoot. At first, the film stumbled mixed reviews, confused audiences. But gradually, younger crowds embraced it. Midnight screenings turned it into a cultural ritual. Its legacy became immense. It redefined science fiction as serious myth-making, paving the way for Lucas to fuse pulp adventure with operatic grandeur. 2001 endures as the quietest yet loudest ancestor to Star Wars. Where Lucas gave us swashbuckling, Kubrick gave us reverence, the dual myths of the galaxy as frontier and the frontier as destiny. Silent Running, 1972. Douglas Trumbull's Silent Running was born from disillusionment. While marketed as a quiet ecological fable, it became something darker, a space western tragedy of the lone outlaw who refuses to yield to progress. The story follows Freeman Lowell, a botanist aboard a vast space freighter carrying Earth's last forests. When orders come to jettison and destroy them, Lowell revolts, killing his crew to preserve the domes. Alone with his robots, Huey and Dewey, he drifts into exile, nurturing life in the void. It was part High Noon, part frontier hermit's tale. Controversy struck hard. Some critics accused it of eco-preaching, others of glorifying murder in the name of ideals. Certain TV syndications even trimmed the crew's death scenes, branding them too disturbing for family audiences. Corporate sponsors, uncomfortable with its anti-industrial message, refused to back wide promotion. Behind the curtain, turmoil was constant. Trumbull, fresh off 2001's visual effects team, struggled with Universal executives who wanted something lighter. Budgets shrank, forcing ingenious use of miniature models and repurposed aircraft hangars. Actor Bruce Dern admitted the isolation scenes drained him emotionally, mirroring Lowell's unraveling. Initially, the film was a flop. Audiences found it too bleak, but decades later, it resurfaced as a cult classic, celebrated for its prescient environmental warnings and heartfelt robot companions. Many see its DNA in Star Wars droids' faithful partners in a hostile galaxy. Silent Running teaches us the price of defiance. Heroes who choose principle over obedience may save life, but lose themselves in the silence of space. Zardoz, 1974. John Boorman's Zardoz is remembered for Sean Connery in a red bandolier, but beneath the memes lies a proto-space western of rebellion, outlaws, and collapsing empires. It was strange, ambitious, and dangerous. The premise: in a dystopian future, a brutal warrior named Zed, Connery, discovers the truth behind his godlike ruler, Zardoz, a false idol used to control the masses. Zed infiltrates the elite Eternals, exposing corruption, decay, and the inevitability of collapse. Strip away the surreal imagery, and it's the classic Western arc. A gunslinger rides into a corrupt town and tears down the lie holding it together. Controversy erupted everywhere. Censors balked at its violence and surreal allegories. Critics sneered, calling it incoherent. Audiences booed at premieres. Connery himself admitted he feared the film would end his career. Rumors swirled that it nearly bankrupted its backers. Some countries delayed its release, nervous about its bleak anti-authoritarian undertones. Behind the scenes, chaos reigned. Borman clashed with studios who didn't understand his vision. Costumes were improvised. The crew worked under punishing schedules, trying to reconcile psychedelic imagery with mythic storytelling. Insiders whispered it was a production spiraling out of control, yet somehow it reached completion. Though initially ridiculed, Zardoz has since been re-evaluated. Scholars note its exploration of false gods, rebellious outlaws, and decaying civilizations influenced later mythic sagas. Lucas may not have drawn directly from it, but the echoes are there, a lone fighter confronting empire and illusion. Zardoz reminds us, myths don't always arrive fully formed. Sometimes they stumble out of the desert, bizarre and half understood, waiting for another storyteller to refine their truth. Dark Star, 1974. John Carpenter's Dark Star began as a student film, but evolved into one of the strangest, most influential space westerns of all time. On the surface, it's a comedy. But underneath, it's the weary cowboy tale of drifters stuck on the endless trail, losing themselves in the emptiness. The plot follows a crew of bored astronauts tasked with destroying unstable planets. Their ship is dilapidated, their morale shattered. When they trap a mischievous alien, a beach ball with claws, chaos ensues. But the climax is haunting. Sergeant Pinback drifts off to his death, while Lieutenant Doolittle surfs into the void on a piece of debris. Gallows humor and fatalism straight out of frontier mythology. Controversy was minimal but telling. Distributors didn't know how to market it. Some theaters labeled it parody, others called it sci-fi horror. Critics were baffled, audiences laughed nervously, and rumors spread that Carpenter's career might stall before it began. Censors targeted its darker sequences for TV edits, calling them too hopeless for broadcast. Behind the curtain, everything was improvised. Budgets were microscopic. Special effects were built from scrap. Editing dragged on for years, and cast members doubled as crew. Carpenter and writer Dan O'Bannon nearly abandoned it multiple times. Yet, that desperation forged ingenuity. O'Bannon later recycled its DNA into Alien. Though ignored on release, Dark Star grew into cult legend. It distilled the essence of the space western: boredom, isolation, dark humor, and fragile humanity against a backdrop of endless frontier. Its fingerprints lie across Star Wars in the battered ships, sarcastic banter, and sense that the galaxy is less shiny utopia, more dusty trail. Dark Star whispers the truth Lucas heard. Space is just another frontier. The stories are the same. Only the horizon changes. Before Star Wars rewrote the rules, these films charted the path half forgotten, half mocked, yet each carrying fragments of myth. Smugglers, drifters, haunted frontiers, echoes of the galaxy far, far away. Which of these strange precursors surprised you most? Drop your thoughts below, and don't forget to like, subscribe,